Today's News Talk.
News and information.
TNT Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to TNT, Today's News Talk. Patrick Henningsen, your host here. We're still in hour number one of this live broadcast. Appreciate you guys in the TNT chat community. We had some incredible numbers in there. Looks like the numbers are growing today as well. Well over 130 people last time. So looks like a very healthy crowd in there. That's where we want to be during the live broadcast in our chat community. Meet some new people, share information, links, memes, chatter, banter. It's all happening in there. That's where you want to be. Little red bubble, bottom right-hand corner. If you go to tntradio.live, you'll be able to log in and stay logged in multiple sessions. So it's very convenient. Great system they got at TNT for our listener and viewer community. I want to welcome onto the program right now a journalist based in Washington, D.C., Sam Husseini, joining us on the line right now. Sam, there's a lot to cover here. Firstly, I just want to get your feelings and thoughts, observations on the status of the International Courts of Justice, the case lodged by South Africa, the interim decision everybody's waiting for. Just let me get your thoughts on that, and also any more commentary on this issue. Go ahead, Sam.
Sure. Well, so far we've seen a lot of countries speak up on behalf of the South African application to the ICJ, and the ICJ, presumably within the next week or two, will issue provisional measures, possibly including a cease and desist order for Israel to stop its slaughter in Gaza. You have seen a couple of countries say that they'll submit declarations of intervention, including Colombia and I believe Namibia, which attacked Germany, which has indicated that it's going to issue a declaration of intervention on behalf of Israel. So that's still the basic lay of the land with that. But you see accumulated evidence of genocidal intent by Israel day by day. They just, they bombed the records office in Gaza. Mm. Okay, so now why are they doing that? We're Hamas fighters using paper shields. No. It just shows further evidence that Israel is out to destroy Palestinian society. The Israeli government is not after the security of the Israeli people. It's after an onslaught, a genocidal onslaught, in order to take the resources from the Palestinians.
On that point, Sam, we've also seen the destruction of multiple universities and university campuses in Gaza. And you're talking about all the PhD records, the faculty record. I mean, there's a whole institutions that have taken decades to build up. And think of all the students, the archives, the libraries, and all of this. It's all been destroyed, right. As well as you said, the administrative and the healthcare. The Gaza Health Ministry, a lot of those archives, administrative archives, in a way, they're destroying the evidence of genocide through the genocide. What your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, they're attempting to liquidate Palestinian society, and as you correctly point out, that's well put, including the records of the people who have lived there. They destroyed graveyards about a week or two ago. So again, that is a way of eradicating the evidence of the population being there, and therefore, as you say, the evidence they're attempting to eradicate any evidence or reminders of the people being there, and therefore the record of the genocide that they are undertaking.
And speaking to a couple of British lawyers recently, they seem to have been, Little Bird has been whispering they expect that the ICJ will come with a recommendation of a ceasefire at some point in the next few weeks. I don't know if you've heard similar noises or rumors on this. What's your feeling on that? Is that how certain or not is that?
I don't think that it's certain. I mean, certainly on the basis of the law, that's I think, quite clearly what should happen. But the other analysis is it's countries acting in their self-interest, and we're not sure how lots of the judges would come down viewed through that lens. I did write a letter to the ICJ pointing out a couple of things to them. Very briefly, I pointed out that Netanyahu, the day after oral arguments were finished, basically gave a speech saying, no one's going to stop us, not Iran, not the axis of terror, not the Hague, just outright brazenly showing his, disdain for the law and for the court. And I also pointed out that Israel went to pains to pretend that there was no dispute between them and South Africa. Well, there was an article in the Israeli press that talked about Israel withdrawing their ambassador from South Africa after South Africa said that Israel's assault was genocidal. So now how does Israel pretend that it had no knowledge of a dispute when it withdrew its ambassador from South Africa? The story is just so absurd on its face. Finally, I talk about the Hannibal Directive, because Israel continuously claims that, it cares so much for its citizens. But here it is killing its own citizens, and now not just soldiers, but civilians as well, possibly the civilians of other countries as well. And that just shows the sheer drive, the ferocity with which Israel is intent on oppressing and killing and terrorizing the Palestinian population, that they are even willing to kill their own people rather than give any Palestinian group some Israeli captives that they would then have to release some Palestinian captives in order to get. The sheer genocidal contempt for the Palestinians is so deep that they don't want that to happen, and they'd rather kill their own people.
Yeah, the evidence on this and how this is being handled, and the total distortion that's taking place politically by the United States, by Israel and their allies, just becoming more evident with each passing week. And I only see, Sam, I only see a blowback building on this, a backlash building. You've already seen the comments by Joseph Borrell, some of the EU officials on this, that they're sort of now making noises about, in the future, Israel could be held accountable for this or that. And so you can kind of see Europe was very slow. They were cowering in the wake of October 7th, but now there's been some time. Now this Hague process has begun. You're starting to see a change of tune a little bit in Europe. I don't know if you've recognized this yet, but go ahead if you have any comment on that.
I picked up a little bit on that. I think that there just needs to be an enormous amount of pressure on these EU officials, that they pretend to care about international law and so on, and here they are. And there needs to be a serious reassertion. For example, even Belgium has put out some decent statements, but they haven't issued a declaration of intervention. And I went back into the history of it. Belgium used to have a universal jurisdiction law that people were using to go after Israeli officials and potentially U.S. officials. And then Rumsfeld in 2003 said, if you don't get rid of that law, we're moving NATO headquarters out of Brussels. And they folded, and they immediately changed the law. So that's I think that sort of in a pithy summary summarizes where Europe is. Is it just going to dance whenever the U.S. and Israel tell it to dance? Belgium should reinstate their universal jurisdiction law. It should be used to go after Israeli and U.S. officials. Other European countries should do that. Other countries should do that. Brazil should do that. A whole host of countries have to change their actual policies. They can't just be hemming and hawing here.
You make a good point here, Sam, because these laws, these processes were on the books, and many have been taken off the books. And one of the things that's been taking them off the books, as you said, is Israel related, or i.e. U.S. pressure being placed on. I mean, Zippy Libni, the Likud, very vociferous, warmongering Israeli official, she had a warrant out for her arrest in the UK, which was lodged after a case was brought to a judge by a Palestinian solidarity organization in the UK. I think this was in 2009. But lo and behold, Keir Starmer, who was head of the Crown Prosecution Services, had that changed to give any Israeli special status. If they're on a political mission, then they're exempt from that arrest warrant. So Israel they got them to change the laws on the books in the UK. So you can't do that anymore. But at that time, for a year there, between 2009 and 2010, she couldn't come to the UK. That changed. So that shows you the power of the political machine there.
Right. Yeah, and it shows you how the law becomes meaningless. If you keep making special provisions for politically connected people that you're allied with, that are connected to the larger empire, and Israel's granted special status, then the law is a farce, and this whole thing is a joke. And that's not a road to a meaningful future.
And on the issue of Yemen, because this is just becoming a major geopolitical situation for the U.S., it is an extraordinary situation, Sam. One of the poorest countries in the Middle East is basically taking on the U.S. and its allies when its wealthy Gulf Arabs aren't. In fact, Saudi Arabia seems to be moving against Yemen on this. And is there, and you've brought this point up as well, is there a path to potential impeachment for the U.S. president over this issue of Yemen? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, in early December, I wrote a piece, one of my series of pieces, urging countries to invoke the Genocide Convention. I wrote a piece saying they call it genocide, but don't invoke the convention. And I went through all of the statements from all these countries saying Israel's committing genocide, Israel's committing genocide. And none of them were, at that point, South Africa hadn't acted yet, invoking the Genocide Convention. So I wrote a similar piece saying all of these people in Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, from Ro Khanna to Marjorie Taylor Greene, Democrats and Republicans, both saying what Trump is doing is unconstitutional. He can't bomb Yemen without congressional authorization. But they won't talk about the constitutional remedy for that, which is impeachment. Quite the contrary. Excuse me. Excuse me. Quite the contrary to Ro Khanna hastened to add when he was interviewed on CNN about what he called Biden's unconstitutional action, saying that it was that he was a firm supporter of Biden. So Biden's shredding the Constitution, but I'm here to support him. And no, the U.S. is fond of saying it is a nation of laws, not of men. And therefore, these Congress people should have the courage of their convictions and impeach Biden for his unconstitutional bombing of Yemen. It's a simple thing. You're supposed to do your job. The core job of any congressperson is to preserve and protect the Constitution of the United States. Constitution says the president should be impeached for grave breaches of the Constitution. They're saying that he, has seriously breached the Constitution on a more pivotal matter than war and peace. And yet, so far, they have refused to act. And that should be a pressure point in terms of domestic action in the United States towards these congresspeople who are pretending to do the right thing.
Well, especially, I'm gonna have to call out the Republicans on this. The Freedom Caucus, for instance, they're all staunch constitutionalists. At least that's what they say. Here's an open goal, and they all oppose Joe Biden, and they want to get rid of Biden. They'll go to any lengths to get rid of Biden. Here's a nice, easy, open goal. You just have to do a little tap, and you go. And that really speaks, Sammy. Doesn't this speak to the uniparty aspect, the bipartisan consensus for aggressive foreign policy and overseas wars? I mean, this will be just the easiest opportunity to put the president on his back heels in an election year. Why don't they do it?
Yeah, because it seems that they are more fond of going after his personal scandals, which may be true enough, and that they've talked that he should be impeached for those reasons, and there may well be a case there. But this is a far more important case, and so then it becomes a matter of are they more subservient to the uniparty, to the empire, than they are hungry to expose Joe Biden. And if that's the case, then it really shows how subservient they actually are, in spite of whatever pretenses they might have of their independence and of their incredible fidelity to the law and to the Constitution. But they're not willing to push the button on this and say Joe Biden should be impeached for grave breaches against the Constitution, for waging an unconstitutional war.
Let's play devil's advocate for a moment, Sam. So
Sure.
if you got your talking points memo from the Israeli lobby, if you're a congressman or a senator, you got a line in with IPAC or whoever, what would the Israeli embassy's position be on impeaching Joe Biden over Yemen?
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously against, because, ultimately the U.S. is striking Yemen because the Houthis are going after Israeli ships with the demand that Israel stop its slaughter in Gaza. So, the underlying issue here quite strongly would appear to be, I'm sure there are other issues, but the underlying major issue is the Israeli slaughter of Gaza. So obviously AIPAC would be on the other side of that. And that could well be the determining factor. I mean, you did have, I remember during Clinton's bombing of Yugoslavia, it was somewhat of a different time, obviously, but you did have some Republicans at that time raise murmurs of impeaching Bill Clinton because he didn't have authorization for that bombing. He attempted to get it and he failed. It was a tie vote, incredible tie vote, which does not constitute affirmative consent. So you had that. You had that dynamic there, and you had some murmurings among Republicans. But here you have nothing so far, absolutely nothing. No congressperson has had the fidelity to the Constitution or the guts to say, hold on, this is wrong. He has to be impeached for this.
That's a great comparison historically, Sam, the Yugoslavian and the Clinton administration. Again, Republicans opting for personal scandal. They were all in on Lewinsky and everything else. I will add, though, which is, I think it was Daniel Halper's book, Clinton Inc., which recounted that time, around that time that Benjamin Netanyahu was blackmailing the Clinton administration over the Monica Lewinsky texts, or sexts, as they were called. So interesting. These are parts of history that we don't normally get privy to at the time, but we find out later in books, in this case, over a decade later. But putting those things together, we're in a sort of similar political position so many decades later, Sam. So things, as much as things change, they stay the same. Your final thoughts on where you think this Yemen situation is. It is hugely dangerous. And doesn't this also have an opportunity for those who are interested in drawing the United States into a confrontation with Iran? Because that seems to be a big priority for certain people. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just on the face of it, Netanyahu has seemed to want the U.S. to be at war with Iran for a very, very long time. So you could certainly see this as part of that design, either escalating through through Yemen or through Lebanon with Hezbollah. But you've also seen, of course, attacks on all sides, virtually in Iraq and Syria and even Pakistan. It could well be a road to escalation, but it could also be sort of a normalization of the slaughter in Gaza. That is, it could be threatening escalation, but not going to a full larger war, and somehow we're all supposed to be relieved that, okay, it's just Israel slaughtering Palestinians in Gaza, and somehow that's acceptable and that can continue. So that there could be an expectations management aspect to this by the U.S. and Israeli establishment.
I think so. I think so. We have to look at it, definitely look at it and through that lens. And certainly that's exactly what certain, I would say, extremist members of definitely on the Republican side, we have the Lindsey Grahams of the world and others who are gagging for an opportunity to see that confrontation take place. The ghost of John McCain still looms large in Washington. You've got a couple of minutes left, Sam. I want to get your take on the 2024 election. What are some of the emerging issues that you're looking at, things of concern, potentially things that we can expand on in the future? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I view both, just to put it succinctly and bluntly, I view both Biden and Trump as dead ends. Trump pretends to be against the establishment, but I liken him to being the opposable thumb of the establishment. He seems to be against it, but he helps it grab more. If you look at the policies that he enacted in his first term, a lot of them were awful, and helped set up the current situation. And you see these other candidates, whether it's RFK, who's even more pro-Israel than Biden or Trump, and you see these Jill Stein of the Green Party and Cornel West running a sort of independent campaign, although it's not clear to me that he's going to be on the ballot anywhere. And Jill Stein, of course, got, 1% last time or something like that. I think that there's a huge opening. And I hope to be writing about this. There's a huge opening for a genuine anti-establishment candidate that gets all of the anti-establishment issues, from COVID to perpetual war to Gaza war and civil liberties and corporate power and the whole gamut. I always think of somebody like Colleen Rowley, who's the 9/11 whistleblower, who's an extraordinary person, has taken a principled stance on all of those issues. She was Person of the Year, Time Magazine Person of the Year back in 2003 for blowing the whistle on the failures of the FBI in terms of stopping 9/11. And she's since been just a great grassroots, down-to-earth political activist who's nurtured a lot of great people. And what you need is a coming together of the left and right, of people who are being segmented and pigeonholed, instead of allowing that to happen, to come together and to manifest a real anti-establishment movement, an anti-establishment center. We sort of saw this with a Rage Against the War Machine rally that happened about a year ago, where you had libertarians and left-wingers coming together, and we need that. We need that to manifest in the electoral process. Otherwise, we're just going to be subjected, and our fellow citizens here in the United States are going to be subjected to nonstop propaganda to figure out the differences between Trump and Biden and all of this nonsense for the next year.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to see that Rage Against the War platform grow and become a bigger tent, as you're saying, Sammy. I think that's the way forward. We hope that that's the case, and everybody can pull together in the interests of the country and interests of the world. That's certainly something that would be most welcome through this 2024 election, if that is able to grow during this process. It's a great opportunity. The question is, are people willing to seize that opportunity right now? Definitely the window's open for that. I absolutely agree with you on that 100%. Sam Husseini, independent journalist based in Washington, D.C. Do follow him on Substack. His columns are incredible. Also follow him on X, Twitter. Just go to, we have your Substack on a display on the Chiron below, but give a shout out to your journalistic venues, Sam, before we go.
Sure. The main thing is Husseini.substack.com. That's Huseini.substack.com. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a break right now with TNT, today's news talk. And when we come back, we'll get reactions from this discussion and also breaking updates from the Middle East from our intrepid correspondent, Basil Valentine, on the other side. I'm Patrick Henningsen. Stay right there. We'll be back in a few.